All right, well, good morning or good afternoon to everybody, depending on where you are in the United States, and welcome to our November call. Can't believe it's November already, but we are very excited today to have Mark Kashman with us. He's going to be presenting on SharePoint and OneDrive, Reinventing Content Collaboration. So that's our agenda for today. And so we're going to be getting right to the content after just a short community welcome. Mark doesn't really need much of an introduction if you've been around SharePoint at all for any length of time. He's very well known in the community, so we're really privileged to have him here today. He's a senior product manager on the SharePoint team, and he focuses primarily on SharePoint Online, on the mobile intelligent intranet, and also delve in the Office graph. And he's been working at Microsoft since 2000, and he's got a full agenda for us today, but we'll try to leave some time at the end for some Q&A. And so go ahead and type your questions into the window. You may not see them answered right away, but I will queue those up and feed those to Mark as they come in and as time allows. So if you're new to our community, welcome. We have a couple of different ways that you can connect with us. And we have our monthly community call. So if you found your way here, you probably don't need that first link, but you can pass it on to maybe others in your organization. And please join our Yammer group. So this is terrific. There's over a couple of thousand US partners there just for Office 365. And I've been really pleased with the engagement and how there's been a lot of partner-to-partner interaction in there. And so you can use that AKAMS join 0365 Yammer. And then we also have a blog at AKAMS US blog where you can learn about kind of our monthly themes and get some updates. There's actually a US blog, and there's also an enablement blog, which is kind of more smaller, more micro posts. Sometimes they tend to be a little bit more on the technical side. So we just kicked that off at the beginning of the year, and so we're still kind of experimenting with that. But don't forget there's that other property as well. I'll have to add that to the slide. So two just quick announcements here. There's one date left if you're interested in attending the Skype for Business Partner Technical Airlift. I have uploaded these slides to our Yammer group. You can find them in the files section, and if that link is not working for you in the PDF, let me know. But anyway, this is really good content. I've gotten lots of feedback from partners. There's one event left in Burlington, Mass. So this is deep technical content for Skype for Business. And then also, if you're interested, a lot of you are looking to get either you're working on your gold or silver cloud productivity cloud productivity competency. And a lot of you say, look, I can't take 5 days out and go to a class. Well, this has been shortened down to 3 days, and these are virtual training. So you can do it online. Normally it costs a couple $1,000, and you can get it for $299. So we are subsidizing that training, and there's several opportunities for you to sign up from mid-November here into December. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Mark. Mark, it's great to have you with us. It's really just quite unbelievable how much has really been happening in SharePoint and SharePoint Online. So it's great to have you kind of fresh off after Ignite to really kind of help catch us up on everything that's been going on. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, and obviously to everybody who's joining, thanks for joining today. I'm going to bet that we don't have a lot of Chicago fans. They're probably still sleeping, and I'll try to kind of carry the echo technically from some of the stuff that we talked about yesterday in ground. Certainly mostly in SharePoint Online and what we're doing with OneDrive for Business, but our team is deeply integrated and pretty excited about Microsoft Teams as well. So yeah, there's a lot happening. We made a big noise just specific to SharePoint and OneDrive in May, and we carried that through to really finishing a lot of what we talked about in May and continuing what we were doing at Ignite timeframe, which was September. And through the end of the year, I think we're really pretty much on track to deliver everything that we talked about, and I'll cover all of that and get into, if you stick around to the whole hour, we'll cover roadmap for both SharePoint and OneDrive towards the end. But certainly there's a lot to cover. I want to make sure we ground it in what the context is for how SharePoint is integrating with Office 365, how OneDrive for Business, built on top of SharePoint Online, is built into Office 365, and really holistically how we're looking to support the reinvention of productivity for our customers through both these products, and of course the role that they play in other products and other scenario and experiences. So we really are, of course, focused heavily, as we always have been, with collaboration, be it new experiences in the way that you can interact with content, find people, obviously share and work and build your content. And there's a lot of different ways to communicate, and of course the intelligence behind it, which is sort of that personal digital assistant we get from machine learning to promote when you're in a certain experience, how can you find what it is you're looking for much easier. Through the people that you work with, how can you discover more content or relevant information on what you're trying to accomplish at that point in time that's very targeted to you, a very personalized and intuitive experience. Everything that we've been doing with SharePoint since the beginning of this year has been aimed at making it a lot more accessible when you're on the go, whether that's on a tablet, a smaller device, or just when you're out of pocket and accessing that content and sharing it and moving things forward. We don't want to limit you there. And as we always have been, but certainly always to reiterate, when you're working in these environments with this content, with your people, and even sometimes just working on your own, everything is based on trust in terms of security, privacy, and the measures that we put in place on your behalf so that you can keep compliant with your own regulations, and of course you're extremely aware of the regulations that we meet and exceed, especially when you compare us to what others are doing in that space. So at the highest level, we really are reinventing productivity, and taking that into then what is SharePoint's role in this. This is really just even just a glimpse at what the full portfolio of Office 365 offers. I am not going to drill into all of this, of course, but just wanting to give you a sense of when we talk about SharePoint and OneDrive, it's not a siloed application or a separate farm where you go and do certain activities. There's certain functionality that it provides, and certainly how it's built is to be more and more connected than it's ever been in terms of the rest of your productivity experience. So when you're authoring a document in Office backed by SharePoint, you should have that ease of being able to share it to Yammer, to share it to email, to now talk about it in Microsoft Teams, but to know that you're managing the content in the right place with the right functionality so that it's secure and easy to share and easy to work on. But alongside this whole portfolio, we're built on top of 365 groups, and there's a lot of work we're doing there to connect Office 365 groups with full SharePoint Online modern team sites, and I'll show you that and talk about that more. The graph, of course, is the intelligence backbone, where we blend in all of that relevant information of how you're working, who you're working with, what you're working on, and only provide that as feedback to you and value to you. This is not where we are mining your data. This is where we are trying to promote on your behalf those things and those people that most likely are going to contribute to the value of your day, week, month. And again, security and compliance, there's a lot of knobs and controls that we now offer, but it certainly have been that backbone of trust that we offer you through the service. So SharePoint, really SharePoint and OneDrive in this connected way, offer that intelligent way to discover and share, continuing that collaboration backbone. And our goal is to offer that no matter where you're at, no matter what device you're on, and you'll see hopefully with the investments that we've made. This is where I would spend a lot of time, but today for the sake of time, I'll really just touch on, because we'll really drill into all of these areas. But this is the way we think of the intelligent intranet coming about. It is mobilely accessible. You can get not just to your lists and libraries, but you can get to all the information in SharePoint through the SharePoint app. The team sites are much more modern, easy to create, easy to use, much more powerful, and of course everything you do in a team site comes through on mobile, on web, cross-platform, Mac and PC. There's a lot of work that the team has been doing to make it a much nicer environment to work in, but also intelligent. There's a lot of the graph that's coming through at the team site level. We've just gotten started on portals and publishing. If you really look at what we're starting next year when I get to roadmap, you'll see where we're going with publishing sites, and the level of what we've done in 2016 for collaboration, we want to do that same level for publishing sites and continue the investments of what you may have built your portal on already, which is that publishing infrastructure. There's also a lot of work we've done with the Power Apps and Flow team, and we'll continue to work with that team to embed their Power App and Flow experiences right into SharePoint lists and libraries to give you that robust capability to easily build custom solutions, but often with no code or very low code. Same backbone really on groups and graph, but the other thing that we add here just visually in the framework of the intelligent intranet is the SharePoint framework. And that is really a new tool for developers to, at least in the initial phases, build client-side web parts that are easy to build. You build them in ways that are much more open and connected. And of course, they play into mobile. And when you see a modern web part through the SharePoint app, it looks great, it resizes well, and that's at no additional cost in terms of the development time. It really is baked into the framework. The final thing on here that's a little bit new as far as a piece of information is that everything we do really has a focus on hybrid. We really want to offer, your customers a way to connect to where their deployment already is or where they would like to deploy to. So whether it's a connected experience of on-premises to online, or it's a motion of migration to move content to the cloud, we have a lot of offerings. Some of it is just direct API, so it all goes much smoother. A lot of it is deep integration work that we've put into the server products so that you can connect to the cloud. And of course, we have offerings to help people get to the cloud. If there is a workload or a set of content that they want to move, we have Fast Track that enables you to move your content in a seamless way with best practices that our team offers and oftentimes provides funding for. So if that's the breadth of the intelligent intranet, let's drill into really all the areas. And this is where, if there are any questions that come out, I'll certainly take them at the end. But start to think of this as the level of really uncovering all the announcements that we've made. And there's a lot to cover. So I'm going to expect that you'll read a little bit more than what I'll say, but hopefully give you the real gist of what we're doing. So your pocket, your intranet in your pocket is really now a reality across all devices. We have now effectively shipped iOS, Android, and Windows. All versions in all of those stores have been fully released, and we're already starting to iterate on the next level of feature sets and next level of reliability, and certainly breadth of what you can connect to is really in the pipeline. And so we introduced a new service called Team News, and now on the iOS version we also released an update to the app that is going to make it so that you can get a roll-up of that team news across all the sites that you interact with. Of course, the core elements of being able to navigate your sites and portals once you're in a site, to be able to access the documents, the lists, to be able to edit, to be able to add pages, to be able to review and to read some of the publishing pages that we create. And everything comes with the ability to see what's going on in the site. Who's doing what? Did somebody modify a document? Did somebody add a list item? And so you can really see those site activities, which are great for getting back to work or discovering what has somebody done or has somebody done something. It's a nice, easy way to discover that right through the app. You see this on the web as well. On the right-hand side, all of these activities and alerts also come through on the SharePoint Home, which is the right side graphic. And that really is your entry point in Office 365 to everything SharePoint. So you would see sites that you're following, sites that you've recently interacted with, and sites that are being promoted both by your IT team, where you can program a list of links for everybody that comes through on mobile and web. And from the suggested sites, that's that graph that's coming through the SharePoint Home that's promoting sites that you might be interested in based on the work that you're doing and the people that you're working with. So once everything has been mobilized and it's coming through these main endpoints, the app and the web, of course, a lot of where people get work done is in a team site. This is where you maybe manage your projects. This is where your documents are stored and you manage them, share them, view them internally, externally. And we want this to be super easy and, of course, accessible across any device. So pretty soon we'll be releasing an update to SharePoint Home that enables you now to create a modern team site connected to Office 365 groups. And that's a big bonus for us, but big bonus for our customers, because it'll take just seconds to create a site. That's huge value, time to market. Connected to Office 365 groups means you get a team site plus a lot of extra value with a shared inbox, a shared calendar, a shared planner, a shared plan and planner, and on down the line in terms of the breadth of what groups offers. We are now a first-party citizen, and an entry point to create a new team site also creates an Office 365 group. One thing I like to note here is if you're creating an Office 365 group from Outlook, you will also get a SharePoint team site. We are just a part of what gets provisioned now when you create a group. And in SharePoint Home, we give you that create site entry point to be able to do that. But we've modernized everything, the home page, the document libraries, the lists. Everything is now modern, accessible on mobile, and much more easy to get work done in terms of who you want to share with, how you want to move content around. You can move and copy from document library to document library, and soon from OneDrive for Business to SharePoint Online. And the same as we talked about with the analytics at the parent level. When you go into a site, you can see site analytics and site activities and really derive on how is this site being used? Is there value in this site? What can I do differently, and learn from that so that you can make your sites and, of course, your information, ultimately your projects and what you're trying to accomplish much more easy without the friction of it being a little bit of a black box on what's going on. So as we start to modernize that home site, one of the things that we've done in connection with working with the Azure team is to really bring their first-party experiences of being able to create mobile applications and being able to create business processes that doesn't take somebody with a PhD to be able to create in Visual Studio, but something where you can much more easily get to an end result of a custom application that maybe is only used for 50 to 500 people. It doesn't have to be a company-wide huge investment. These can be applications that are built in a day or a number of days, depending on the complexity. But as something as simple as building a nice form off of a list so that you can rapidly deliver that to the team. It might be where you have a scenario where you want to check out hardware from a certain team. So you put a list together of the hardware that's available, put together a tracking mechanism in another list that enables you to have somebody be able to check out a certain piece of equipment, and you munge those very quickly and easily together in an app that you can easily deliver to anybody that needs it. And when you make an update to it, it'll update it as you go. So they're very powerful, very much easier to use than if you had tried to, build a custom application in the past when you map forms and the logic. But with Power Apps and Flow, you can easily start directly from a list that you've created, or create a list as you go, and derive off of that a really nice, rich application like you see here. And again, no code, just using tools that are out of the box. And of course, with SharePoint, it's just a click away to start to get to that endpoint. So there's a lot of work we'll do there. They just announced their GA moment this week. There's been a lot of announcements this week. So if you're thinking about actually building in a supported way a Power App connected to Microsoft Flow, those are both at GA. Of course, our modern experiences in the service are up and running now. And so you'll see the Flow button. Give it a try, launch a Power App, connect it to a SharePoint list. We'll also be supporting that in a SharePoint document library pretty soon here in the future. So switching gears a little bit, but not too far. Certainly when we talk about content collaboration, we want to make sure that people think of both SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business. So when you look at what we've been doing with OneDrive for Business, there's been a huge amount of focus on the apps. And really the biggest work we've done in the earlier part of the year was to consolidate it so that it was just one app, OneDrive. That connects both OneDrive Consumer and OneDrive for Business if you use both. And soon, by end of year, will be connected, already, if you see here, the Sites tab is connecting to SharePoint Online team sites. So you can navigate SharePoint Online team site document libraries. And in a connected way, you can navigate between the two environments, or three environments if you're also connecting to SharePoint, with everything intact in terms of authentication. So we've gotten a lot of great feedback on these apps. We've improved them monthly with new features, functionality, and of course the breadth of reliability. And it really is a deep connection between how you can manage your content, view your content, share your content, take your content offline, even mark up PDFs and some of the interesting innovation that teams have been working on so that you can do what you need to do even when you're mobile. And one of the other things I'll just say that the team's been doing a lot of work on within the app and the web is the visualization of previewing a file. So you see the thumbnails everywhere. Most of the ones in these graphics are Office documents, but the team has been doing a lot of work to work with Adobe as well. So PDFs, Photoshop documents, Illustrator documents, raw images that come off of cameras if you're storing those in OneDrive, giving those rich previews before you commit to opening it to know that, yes, I found the right document or I found the right image, And that's what I want to share with somebody without having to open it, review it, and then share it. So a little bit quicker time to market if you're just looking to make sure that you're sending the right thing to somebody, and that you can do that no matter where you're coming from. The other thing that, of course, the team has been doing is we got a little bit of a ding by nature of our historical sync client, which was based on the Groove technology. But if you're very current on everything that we're doing, or you're just very much deployed in a modern way, our next generation sync client really has gotten rid of all of those reliability issues, and we're doubling down now on new features. So this is leveraging a connection to OneDrive Consumer, OneDrive for Business, and by end of year we will also connect and sync SharePoint Online team site document libraries. So this is basically one sync engine to rule them all. It's based on a very solid core that works both on Mac and PC, and gives you the functionality to be able to do things like Selective Sync, so that if you're connecting to a device that has a low amount of storage, you don't have to sync all that content. Also down the road, the team is working on not only giving you the ability to sync certain content, but you could at least see all of the content that's in your OneDrive for Business or in other sites that you've synced technically for visibility, but not actually brought all the full amount of content. You just get little like short links to know what content is there, and then when you click on it, you can commit to a download. And so there's a lot of work they're doing to be able to optimize for when you sync with a device. If you don't want to sync everything, you at least have visibility on everything that's being stored in the cloud, and then in the future be able to choose what you want to bring down. So if you haven't been using the next-gen sync client, I will tell you it's a breath of fresh air. I was dinged about 6 or 7 months ago with the common reliability issue that our old sync client met, and it was no fun. And we are living proof that we are back, and that sync is now certainly rock solid. And we stand behind it with all the work that we've been doing with this new sync client, again, for PC and Mac. When you look at everything that we do in both OneDrive for Business and SharePoint Online, one of our greatest assets, really, when I first describe to somebody who's not very familiar with what is SharePoint, I often tell them it's a back end to everything you do with Office. When you're working in the client applications, storing, sharing, obviously co-authoring, and a lot of those higher end features, it gives us the breadth of what we can do and doesn't limit us when we're either on our mobile device or through the web, or of course the rich clients on the desktop, Mac or PC. But there's a lot of work that we do to optimize how those work together. We may be first to market with a feature, or we may be in market and are the only ones that offer this type of capability. But when you think of something as common as a most recently used file, and those lists being pervasive in the desktop clients, in the mobile applications, and of course in the online applications, sometimes that is the quickest way to get to the content you've most recently touched. And it is a super powerful list that follows you wherever you go. But when you get down to things like sharing, co-authoring, obviously the notifications on if somebody else you've sent a link to review a document and they've opened it or they've made an edit to that, you would see that and you'd get a notification right in line with where you're working, and of course through the device if you're working on a mobile device. So there's a lot of work we do to make it true Office integration, and certainly that's something that we will always continue because they are great assets when they're put together. From an IT perspective, certainly there's a lot that we do in the cloud that's connected to Azure AD, Azure Active Directory. And if customers choose to connect that to on-premises Active Directory, we support that. A lot of the new functionality that we have here is that you can set now new policies based on conditional access. And we have that more now at the parent level in the Office 365 admin. When you go and manage OneDrive for Business today, it's a little bit of a mixture where you're doing that from, whether it's in SharePoint Online admin, Office 365 admin, but a lot of it is now being pushed up to the parent level. And one of the things that we announced was an integrated OneDrive for Business admin center that gives you now a more connected space to do everything oriented around OneDrive for Business, so that we'll have 2 admin centers specifically for OneDrive and SharePoint. And when it gets to the user level, managing the user, managing security across all these zones, looking at reports, auditing, those types of things, you'll access that from the OneDrive, the Office 365 Admin Center. there's a lot of work we're also doing with the Intune team to give you options for managing devices through MDM and MAM. And that would be, again, something that's parent level across multiple workloads. Now OneDrive for Business being able to offer that so that you can manage devices and control the enterprise data without having to full wipe a device if there's a scenario where you need to control that device. So the OneDrive for Business team, the SharePoint Online teams have been working very closely with the information protection team so that we are first party to when they offer DLP, e-discovery, legal holds, or something that's more device and data protection through MDM and MAM. That is something that you would do through the Office 365 Admin Center, and it's something that we certainly promote and provide for both SharePoint and OneDrive now. The OneDrive for Business Admin Center that I mentioned, this is just a single screenshot to give you an idea of what it would look like. But like any service from the Office 365 Admin Center, you would click on within the services. There's SharePoint, Exchange, Skype. There will now, in the future, by end of year, I believe, be a OneDrive area that you can click into. And as you see here, this is where you would go to control the sharing feature functionality. This is where you go to control sync, so you can control who can sync, what IP addresses, those kind of things will land there. You can adjust storage if you want to limit storage for certain users or limit to a certain amount so that you give the right amount of what to store in OneDrive for Business, different people's folders, but maybe some of it is focused more on putting the right content in SharePoint Online. And some of the user access, just to be able to show what is currently in the user area of Office 365 Admin Center will be pushed down, and you'll be able to manage a per user basis to manage each individual user's OneDrive for Business. So there's a lot of work going into consolidation. There's also a lot of work in modernizing the look and feel for admins so that it looks great, and you can do this anywhere on any device. You'll be able to access this environment. But of course, it's the functionality that's there so that you can quickly and easily manage OneDrive for Business. There's also an overhaul coming to SharePoint Online Admin Center. I don't have any early screenshots, but I would expect that to come and land in the early part of 2017, and there's a lot of work and thinking going on. What graduates to Office 365 Admin? What goes to OneDrive for Business Admin? What remains, of course, in SharePoint Online Admin, and giving the right level of functionality, of course, in a much more modern and rich way. I've got 2 slides here before I cut over and do just a little bit of demo, and then we'll talk about roadmap after. But I really wanted to make sure that we call out what we're doing for developers. If you think about the Microsoft Graph powering all of these new experiences throughout SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, really throughout Office 365, and what people are now doing on premises, pulling the graph in and enabling a richer, personalized experience for their own custom applications. Some of the way that you accomplish that is through the Microsoft Graph. And the Graph gives us access through one API endpoint to connect everything through files, through mail, through calendar, obviously to connect to OneNote, the sites, anything really that we have as content and an experience in Office 365. We want to give developers an endpoint to go through to be able to derive that content or derive the relevance based on that content to be able to then populate and create their own custom solutions. That could be on premises, that could be on a mobile device, or that could be in the web as a part of Office 365. Where you can do custom development, you'll be able to then pull in through this API all of that information that's based on your tenancy, or if you're building on behalf of a customer, to be able to pull in their data and represent it in the way that they want in a custom web part or in a custom full page app, or like I said, something like a full mobile app custom to them, but really populated and pulling in all of their content that's in these different zones. So it's a very powerful API, and it's where a lot of work is to really consolidate the ease of how a developer can work against Office 365, and of course that value of what's in the graph. Specific to SharePoint, and this plays into hopefully how other teams will take advantage of building web parts that will connect to their own services, but we're building as an additive to the collection of what developers can do already today in the cloud. And of course this will play out to be able to build out rich applications on premises as well, is we're working on a new modern client-side development framework, which gives our developers a toolkit to be able to build in a more modern web way versus a more SharePoint proprietary way. And so still the graph is a big part of this to be able to pull that data through. But when it comes to the presentation layer, having it be client-side means you can do a lot of richer applications that by default run in the web and the mobile. And you can see here just a visual representation of being able to add web parts into the toolbox, being able to drop those on the page, and know that no matter what you have in the toolbox for end users to build against, the methods of developing those web parts play into them rendering great on a mobile device. Of course, they're powerful as well, so that you can have these be backwards compatible. If you want to bring these into a classic team site, you'd be able to do that. And we're promoting the use of open and more web-based tools that obviously are not just a .NET framework, that these are using more JavaScript with some tools like Gulp that enable a broader set of developers to be able to interact and build solutions against data that lives in SharePoint, OneDrive, and of course throughout Office 365. There's a lot of work we're doing to enable this for the team site, and if you think some of the stuff that I will show you around news and publishing pages is where you will see at first the web parts that we're building, but there will be a great example of just the way that we're building is the exact way that we want to enable third-party developers to build and deliver solutions into these same environments, just like we are doing. So with that, I'm going to jump and turn to my desktop. And Michael, I'll just ask you if you can just give me some verbal confirmation that what's coming through on my desktop after I share it is visible.
I will.
And we'll take a look at a lot of this. So it sounded like things were coming through. And just to orient you on where we're at, this is the new SharePoint Home. If you haven't seen it recently, this is effectively what used to be called the Sites tile. So look and feel, of course, it's gotten a lot more modern, a lot more friendly in terms of it actually providing information before you click into anything. But just to orient you where I am at is if I had clicked into the app launcher, this is if I'm on SharePoint, which used to be the Sites tile, branded now as SharePoint, that really gives you that window into everything that's connected from a sites and portals perspective in Office 365. So really the front and center is everything that I've been doing frequently. I'm logged in as Adam, and these are all the things that Adam has been doing throughout all the sites that he's interacted with. And I'm also be able to see a peek through to those site activities that I mentioned. These are site activities that are very tailored to Adam because the system knows that Adam is signed in. The system knows a lot about Adam through the Microsoft Graph, and so we plumb through some of that intelligence that we get from the graph to show Adam what's most relevant to him that's happening on this team site right now. So there's a number of team sites. There's also video channels that would be if somebody had uploaded a new video or Adam had uploaded a new video, you would see that here as an activity. And then at the bottom here, you get a sense of sites that are being suggested. So this is another element of the graph based on the people that Adam works with and the content that Adam works on or contributes to. The service is now going to suggest these sites, based on all that information and data about Adam, sites that he also might be interested in. So you can quickly see if there's a site of interest, you can choose to follow it so you can get back to it later, or you can click into it to learn more. And you'll see now that that new followed site will show through here on following sites. And it just popped in. And then featured links are a carryover from what we had on the sites page, where these are links that IT can program. And it can be a URL to anything. The ones that we've highlighted here that might be relevant to an intranet is something like the Office 365 video portal, a custom company portal like this one, Contoso portal. These follow through and are promoted to everybody that logs into this page. And of course, on the SharePoint app, you would see this list of links as well on the Links tab. So this is the front end to get into everything SharePoint in terms of on-premises or online. If you're in a hybrid state, you would also see coming through here links to on-premises sites as well. And in addition to that, when you're in a hybrid state, I might be going from an on-premises HR portal that's not yet in online, clicking SharePoint takes me to then get me into all of my sites and portals, both on premises and online, and that commonality between the app launcher and, of course, then what I see here on this page. The functionality that we're releasing here in the next week or two, which we've shown before, but I'll show again here, is coming very soon, is the ability to create sites that are connected to Office 365 groups. So I'm just going to go in here and in the new wizard, create a new team site, and in the second step you'll see on how I'm connecting it to Office 365 groups when I make the list of members. So I'm going to go in here and do partner call, and it's going to let me know, is that available? What it's asking me, what it's telling me though, is it's an available item to be added to my Azure Active Directory. When I create an Office 365 group, I'm creating a group object in Azure AD, and this is telling me that that's available. It's also letting me know that this is what the team site URL is going to be, so that's the kind of hard-coded name for the group. I could call it whatever I wanted and then go in here and adjust the name from a group email perspective. And so you can play with these and really name it whatever you want. But following that same line of I'm creating a group, I can determine whether this group and all of the assets the group leverages is public or private. Private meaning you have to request to join it. Public meaning anybody can join it, but it's not public to the world. It's just still within inside your tenant or your customer's tenant. After I give it a description, through this wizard you can now set a classification for the site. This is pretty new. Not a new concept for SharePoint, but new for this wizard and how you can configure it as you're creating the site. So I can create this to be internal only or confidential. In the near future, we hope by end of year, we'll actually enable you to add and adjust what these different policies mean. And to give you an example, if I listed something as confidential, that would automatically turn off external sharing, and it would maybe automatically wrap every file with the service from Azure for rights management protection. And so if I left it as general purpose, basically all features are turned on, and as I go down the stack, I might turn off certain features or functionality based on how I will classify a site. But for now, we have these three settings, and certainly they come with a different level of what happens when you choose them. But here's one thing to note: when I click next, it's actually going to go and create the site, and the site is now being created. And if you watch this, when this finish button becomes blue, that'll tell you how fast it took to create a site, a full site collection in SharePoint Online. So it's done. Our goal has always been in this new model to create a site in less than 5 seconds, and that one was pretty close. So it used to take up to 15 minutes in the queue of SharePoint Online admin, but right here, right now, as an end user, if you enable this as IT, your end users can quickly get to working on a project, spinning up a team site, and getting their work done, connected to the rest of the value of Office 365 groups. So here's where I'm going to go in and type in a few folks and just add them as other members of the team and make them owners and members. And when I click finish, you'll see that pretty quickly this takes me right to the site and gets me started, where I can start to create news, add documents, create pages, add lists, create custom solutions with Power Apps and Flow. And you get to the point that this is connected to Office 365 groups. It reminds me that everything that I've just established, that it's public, it's for general purpose. I'm getting that visual cue as a user of this site. If I click onto the site card, I can see now that I have access to all of those other elements of the group, where I can go home, which is the page we're on. I can go to the conversations in Outlook conversations. I can go to the shared calendar, down into looking up the notebook and using that, and of course adding or removing members from a membership management perspective. So this gives me the access to the full breadth. And some of these things aren't in SharePoint, but they're connected in how users will get from one scenario or task to the other. But to give a little bit more reality, just to show you a couple more things on what we've done in the site, is how we've actually modernized the elements within the site. So I'm going to go back to the SharePoint Home to get to a team site that's effectively been worked on for a while from a scenario perspective, and quickly show you some of the new functionality. Here is the new web part we call News, to create news, and I'll show you that in a second. We've been talking about site activity. When you're on the web, you get a little bit more of a richer view of all the site activity. and you can see all the different things that have been happening here, things that are trending, new documents that are added. And you see here on the left-hand side, we get an editable left-hand navigation. Again, we're connected to groups. So in this instance, if I have been working for a while and I had an active calendar, I could go right into Exchange Online Calendar that's connected to this group that happens to be using this particular team site. The other thing that we've modernized is the ability to more quickly inline create lists, libraries, new pages for things that will last and be available to anybody that comes to the site. And of course, if you had a new app, this would be where you would go to add that app. So these are a little bit of an easier way to get to the new modern experience to create these new elements as you need them. But let's create a new piece of news, and I'll do this pretty quickly from just a demoing perspective. But what I'm going to do here is inline create a new page in SharePoint, but it's a new type of page we call news that will roll up here on the website, and if I'm active in this site, it'll come through to me on my SharePoint app on the new News tab. So I'm going to go in here, just layer in some text, and we'll be, again, pretty quick here for time, where I can go in and bold. I can, format this in a lot of different ways. I can hyperlink different words. I'm going to go in here and add a document as well and do a picker just for my recent, just for sake of time, but I could navigate to put in any document. If it's an Office document, certainly we will use the online viewers so that we can navigate. We could add a caption. I'm going to put in some highlighted content, which if you're familiar with SharePoint past, we used to call this content by search. But now, if you see what pulls through here is content just on this site. I could choose content from all sites across my tenant. And I can choose what type of documents that show through here. So if I only want to show pages or videos, images, I could even pull through things like tasks and links. But I'll show you how it refreshes pretty much right here in line when I filter by a certain keyword. And so I'll do based on the keyword loyalty. And if you saw that, this web part is now adjusting. Anything that has the word loyalty in the title or the description will now show up here. And anything that's added, even after I've published this page, will show up here as well dynamically, both on the web and through mobile. And if I wanted to, I could change it to a list view, and you get a sense here, here's the content that matches that criteria. Then as I move on, last thing I'll do is I'll add another web part. You can see a couple of the ones that we have here, but I'll just add a Yammer feed, and I'll go in quickly to Yammer and just grab one of the groups that I'm active in Yammer, and you can see how I'll pull that same discussion from the Yammer UI and put it into this if I wanted to have a place for people to add comments in this particular piece of news. So I'm going to go in here to the sales opportunity group, copy paste, go back into where I had posted that in, and it'll pull through now. I can display it and change the size. We'll make it medium. And you can see here it's already pulling through that Yammer feed, so if I wanted to have, again, comments, when I publish this down, it's going to then push it as a new item on my home page. You'll see it show up here. It's going to pull a graphic from within inside that PowerPoint so that we get some visual cue on what this is for. And now it's going to be pushed out proactively and consumed by anybody that's active in this site based on the graph for their view on their mobile device. So it's a nice service to be able to push out team news, and it would be across different team sites that I'm active in. One note here is we'll be working on, for earlier, maybe end of year, early part of next, a new service as a part of the news service for company-wide news. So something that's more top-down to be able to create the news in a similar way for a smaller set of people that are pushing out news to the whole company, and to be able to curate that and promote that in a lot of different endpoints. Primarily, initially, what would come through the SharePoint app, you would get corporate news, team news, and have those be a munch of news that's relevant to that end user. So if I go into kind of the next level of where we've modernized the experience, if you haven't seen document libraries in a little bit, they've certainly got a big uplift. And so there's a lot of new functionality. Of course, it still maintains all the same value of what you've had in the past, where you can upload content, easily share it, add metadata, manage it, move it around. But some of the things that we've enhanced are the ability to bring in content that doesn't necessarily live in the document library itself. So anytime you see this world icon, this is actually content or even a URL that points to a video in YouTube or a site out on the internet, but it's relevant to the team and they want to store it right in line with all the other content. So you can easily do that by going up here and clicking New, create a new Office document, or the one that I was mentioning is creating a new link. Here's again where the graph comes through and shows me a list of all the recent content that's relevant to me. And if I wanted to, I could easily add one of these documents, or I could just paste in any URL here. And I'll go in here and just paste something to Bing News. So create that. It's going to add it as a new link here in the site. And of course, I can change those things as much as I want. The other thing you see up here is to be able to pin content. I could pin a link. I could pin a document. I'll go up here and pin a new Word document. Click Pin to Top. And now I've got 3 elements that are visually represented here for people. When they land, they would first see these 3 items. It's, of course, really easy to navigate to grab a link. If I needed to, I could also move this content. So when I select an item, the taskbar up here, the toolbar adjusts, and you can see where I can move this. And the picker on the right-hand side enables me to then choose where do I want to move it to. If I had clicked Copy To, it would keep a copy in our document library and move a copy maybe to a document center for long-term retention. And lastly, one example that we have here is the ability to customize the experience. So we have an example where we worked with DocuSign to get a custom workflow that starts when you highlight a piece of content, click Get Signatures, and it'll route through what that custom application, DocuSign here as an example, would then route you through. Last thing I want to show you in the context of document library is the ease of which we want to enable it to be a really nice experience. So you've been seeing here just more of a list view. We could also view it in a tile view. So you get those rich thumbnails coming through. We maintain the pinned documents at the top, but you start to see that richer view to be able to see what is that content. Is it the one that I'm looking for before you commit to opening it or sending it to somebody? And then another way to see this from a visual cue perspective is if I am looking at the document library and I want to actually go in and see something that's more of a multimedia experience. This is a document, this is a folder full of images, and in the past we kind of had light support for image review. But if I actually want to click in here and then click through all of them, you'll see here we're getting a much more immersive experience in a full scale to then navigate through and view images that are stored in a document library in SharePoint. The same would be true if I was in OneDrive for Business. So you get a nice, rich, immersive experience to be able to view content, even if it's multimedia or not an Office document. Last thing in a modern team site, of course, is a modern list. And we've been talking about modernizing the whole experience. Again, you see that consistency of the experience going from document libraries to lists to creating new content. And right here, you start to see that that integration that I talked about, which is the integration with Flow and Power Apps. So if I wanted to go create a flow, meaning I want to create a workflow that pulls in information from outside and pushes it into this list, I could easily do that. I'm going to click in to see an existing flow and show you sort of stepping through an example of what is a flow and how do I create it. This is a pretty simple one, and if I had created create flow, it would have started me here in the template that you see, but I'll click into some of these things and you'll get a sense of how we adjusted this from a demo perspective to show you what you can do with flow. So as the canvas loads here, you would see that when an existing item is modified in SharePoint that's based on this condition, in the column of what type of reward it is equal to a free product, it will then send an email to me, Adam, logged in, and it has as a subject in the email that it's a new idea, could have an image connected to it, and then by nature of what you then can do in what the email looks like, and it's pretty powerful, is if I go great idea, comma, needs further review, not possible duplicate, these will show up as buttons in the email that are actionable to the person it got sent to or to the people it got sent to. Once one of these buttons is clicked, it's going to then update that item in the list to then move it along down, and you can see where I can easily add another action, another condition, create a new step, and it's really to design the process that I want to follow, that then anytime an item is added to this list, that this will then take place. But if you go back to the list, and we'll just do it a little bit manually here, you could add a new list from a Power App, and we'll do this pretty quickly. Submitted by me, so we'll do Adam and have this be a lookup, and then a type of reward. We're going to do free product and choose that, and then I could fill out a lot more, add an attachment or an image. But I'm going to save it so that when I go now to Adam's email, you'll see how it's been triggered as a new item added to this list, and what does that mean to Adam in the email. Just for sake of time, if it doesn't come through immediately, I'm going to show you one that's been submitted before so you get a sense of what it looks like, this email. Here's the title of the item. This image, which should come through here, I think was a pair of socks that we submitted in another demo. And you'll see here those are the buttons that I mentioned. So no matter what I typed in, a button gets created, and if I click Great Idea, it'll then commit that as an action that I took to then move that status of that item to maybe somebody in the operations team to then go ahead and order that as a new item that we'll give away when somebody wins a prize. So let me switch gears and in the last about 5 minutes give you a quick overview of some of the things in OneDrive for Business. And again, hopefully generating questions along the way, and we'll then talk roadmap and answer some questions. So the user interface here should look very similar to what I showed you in the document library. It's actually where a lot of that innovation came first for modernizing the experience of OneDrive for Business. Of course, we did the same so that it was a consistent way to manage your files throughout Office 365. But there's a lot of pivots on how you access content. Your files are the ones that you manage and actually are actual files in your OneDrive for Business area. Then there's a list of recent files, whether they're in your OneDrive for Business or beyond, if they've been shared with you, specific to ones that have been shared with you, if you haven't recently touched them but you wanted to get back to them. You have the Shared With Me list, and this is used to come off of the search engine, so this was search driven. One of the areas we're now working on is the ability to discover content, and it could include things that are shared with you that you've recently touched or are just being worked on by other people. So when we talked about the intelligence of the graph coming through, this is what the Microsoft graph, how we've built against it, looks like right inside OneDrive for Business. So because you're in OneDrive for Business, we know and expect that you're working on files and managing your files. And there may be that point in time in the day or the week where you want to go and see what are other people working on, what other content. I'm looking for a specific slide that I need, or I'm curious to know, people working on similar content who I'm working closely with, or other people who are working closely with them. I can go in here and discover content that's happening around me. And for me, this proves out to be pretty helpful, especially when I see real people, not just within demo, working on real content. And in the case where I might come across something that Jeff's working on, or Bill or Ruben, in the real world where Mark is working on real content, this has been hugely valuable to me just to see what are other people working on, clicking into it without disturbing them, and it is only based on things that I have permissions to view. So I'm not going to see anything here that I don't have permissions to view, but if I have permissions to view it because it was shared with me or it has some open permissions in terms of working with the team, I would see it here and it might save me some time, or it might increase my discoverability of, oh, I didn't know Bill was working on that. That's helpful to me. I would love to read a little bit more about that to be more informed, or to provide him feedback based on what he's working on. So there's a lot of things, certainly that we've been working against the graph. This all carries through on the mobile device, and everything that I've showed you for SharePoint and OneDrive comes through the SharePoint mobile app as well. And that's really the last thing that I want to show you, and it's kind of a cheat, but you can follow along. If you type in aka.ms/SPMII, this will take you to a sway that I manage. And for me, just to quickly show you a couple of images of what the new SharePoint app looks like, I'm just going to scroll down to that area where I've got about 20 images of the SharePoint app. This is one in particular of the SharePoint app for iOS, but certainly is available for Android and for Windows Phone. But if you look at here, you can see the different tabs for sites, links. When you navigate into a team site, you can see site activities. You can go in and find content. You can see what's trending in terms of what's popular. You can go in and navigate in behind the scenes to get different lists, libraries, to navigate to those pages, and of course to navigate to those news articles that you may have created or are consuming. These are the links that come through when you're looking at links that are programmed by IT. And of course, if you have those links that lead to pages that are more things that are like a portal, a custom portal, this is the Office 365 video portal. It's all responsively designed, so it looks great on mobile. This is an example of a Contoso portal that's been designed like a company intranet, of course with responsive design built in, looks great through the rendering right in app in the SharePoint app. There's a lot of different aspects, of course, to managing and working with people so that you can discover content through people or simply just contact them. But if you look at somebody's people card in the SharePoint app, and this is true in a lot of our different apps as well, the people card really shows you not just their contact information, but who they're working with, what they're working on, so that you can have that discovery of content through people that you know and work closely with. So that is kind of a quick demo through a lot of the new stuff. I want to turn back to just wrapping up a little bit on roadmap. So I'm going to jump back into the call here and load up the PowerPoint. Michael, let's see if we go back into sharing the content. Get that loaded back up. And Michael, as I click through some of the roadmap slides, you know, some of the things that I've talked about, I showed you. It's certainly in market or in first release at this point in time, or in a preview state, like our SharePoint framework is in preview. But as I click through here, you'll see a lot of what I talked about, a lot of what I demoed, and our intent to ship a lot of this by end of year. So we already have team news rolling out. We've released the next-gen sync client from a OneDrive for Business perspective. We're working on the next feature for that, which is the ability to sync SharePoint sites as well. Some of the people experiences where you can hover over somebody's name. I forgot to show you this. You can see a rich people card inside of OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, and in Outlook in the web, where you hover over somebody's name. You can see who they're working with, what they're working on, before you even commit to opening any content or going to their full profile. Some of the things that will come in the early part of next year from a SharePoint perspective, we're going to be releasing a lot more web parts like the Power BI, the Yammer web part. We'll be releasing and working with the Planner team and a lot of other web parts that we're working on, with the ability to, once we release the SharePoint framework, for third-party developers to also create their own web parts that show up right in line with that new toolbox in the publishing pages and the news creation. But we're also working on enabling more extensibility components, not just building web parts, but being able to modernize, being able to extend the modern home page is something that we're working on. And all of this is also being driven so that we can create more performant publishing experiences. If you've built a custom portal already today, the underlying components will become faster so the pages load and are more performant. But we've also got a big ticket item that we're working on that we call publishing sites. So when you go through that wizard of creating a site from the SharePoint Home, you will choose Create Site, Publishing Site, and there will be a number of templates to choose from to create more broadcast type sites that will help you quickly be able to broadcast new elements of a campaign, new elements of a project launch, something that maybe is a quarterly business review where you have your sort of final, here's what we presented to the executives, all the way through to some scenarios like knowledge management, where we want people to create a publishing site for content that's more curated and mandated as final, or listed as partner ready, customer ready, or internal only, those types of things. So there's a lot we're doing around publishing sites. You'll hear us talk about it a lot more next year, but it's very much top of mind, and it's a big area of investment next year. starting next year. Specific to OneDrive for Business, most everything that I talked about and showed in the first two columns is releasing or coming out very soon by end of year. The biggest ticket item for them, of course, is just getting Sync reliable, nailing it across OneDrive, and starting to move into nailing it for SharePoint Online. And then futures is to certainly look at SharePoint on-premise Sync as well. If you look at what they're doing in the Admin Center, that hopefully will drop by end of year to have a new admin experience for OneDrive for Business. Also to infuse more and more of the OneDrive experience with new experiences based on the graph, the ability to see who you've shared with, to be able to curate your shared with me view, where you might have had something shared with you, but you don't want it to clutter your view of what's been shared with you. You'll now be able to manage that list. There are a lot more activities that you see on a file. In the apps, in the web, you'll be able to see how popular is your content, how is it being used, is it effective? You'll be able to get analytics on that. And of course, there's a lot of work we're doing from an IT perspective to remove some of those blockers and add a lot more control of how people use and are working in their OneDrive for Business environment. And this is true across SharePoint and OneDrive for Business. When you see us do things like the removal of certain character types, that's not just a OneDrive for Business feature, that's also a feature of when you upload content into OneDrive for Business, you can name it whatever you want. The path name can be very long or a lot longer than in the past. And everything you do in terms of file types and content types, we'll be able to upload, we'll be able to sync, and of course you'll be able to use that and share it. So we really want to enable it to be a place where you can share, store, and sync anything and have that be a great experience across mobile, web, and not a limit to either PC or Mac, but both. So there's a lot of work this team's been doing. If you haven't tried it recently, I would encourage you to try it both for OneDrive for Business and SharePoint Online, especially how it's more connected to Office 365 than ever before. And of course, the support of hybrid is hugely important. So, Michael, I know we're at time. I apologize that we went a little bit long in terms of presentation demo, but I definitely will commit to answering questions for the next 5 or 10 minutes. If you in the audience are able to stay, and certainly Michael, if you've been able to curate some of that so we can get going on that right away. So, Michael, any questions that come through?
Yes, thanks so much, Mark. Terrific update and great work from the team, and a lot of more exciting things to come. So really appreciate the update here. For those of you who are not able to stay on, you could always go back to the same place where you registered and get this content on demand. So feel free to come back if you have to drop to get some of the Q&A, and we'll just stay on for a few more minutes. So apologize for going over. We had a couple of questions, Mark, around how the modern team sites and groups and how they relate at all to Microsoft Teams. You know, are they different? Are they same? How are they related? Are they related?
Yeah, no, they're very much tied at the hip. I mean, just to be clear, some of the work that we're doing with Office 365 groups is just now rolling out, so it is fully supported in first release. But to start there, Office 365 groups is a list of active members working together, and obviously are put together at a user level, where you say, I'm working with these 10 people on this project. When you spin up an Office 365 group, you are also going to get a modern team site as one of the elements where you're going to be working, most likely to manage a list of information, to manage your documents, to promote things like creating news and sharing that, to create the content, and it is a place where all of that is stored and managed. But it's tied to Office 365 groups as the membership entity, so that anybody who's in the group has access to the site. Anybody who's an owner can, of course, change and adapt the site in a lot more richer way in terms of managing it. But anybody who's a member can come to the site, see the pages, access the content, share it, and get work done. But to be very clear, Office 365 Group is also attached to Exchange. So Groups also brings a shared calendar, a shared inbox, and elements like Planner, even something more powerful like Power BI or CRM. The group is just saying these people are working together, they're an object in Active Directory, and it helps manage who has permissions to access these different services for that group's purpose. But coming to that is now the element of Microsoft Teams, which is primarily focused on persistent chat. But when you're in the chat, you have the ability to add content, whether you create it with using some of the meme generator just to get across an emotion, or if you add something rich like a document or a pointer to a page or even a full team site, you can then chat around those pieces of content. Hey, do you have that deck? I was looking for it. I was working with another team member. I'm going to mention them and bring them in and ask them to share that piece of content that's stored in their OneDrive for Business, but I want it referenced for the team. So Microsoft Teams that got announced yesterday is a part of Office 365 groups, and it's an environment when you're working in it where it's primarily driven by chat, persistent chat across the team. The team is effectively that same group of members that is in the Office 365 group list. So if I have a group like we created today for the partner call, let's say we had 500 people on the call or 50 people on the call, it doesn't matter. I created an Office 365 group for those 50 people, and we all got access to a common team site, a common shared calendar, a persistent chat interface where we can then have rich conversations that are stored throughout the history of the group, and I can easily bring in and reference content that's going to be right in line in that chat mode. All of it comes through wonderfully through mobile. There's really nice Microsoft Teams applications. I've been using the one for Android for about the last 2 months. It's a really nice application that gets me to, when I'm on the go, I can add to the chat, I can reference material that's in the team site. If I'm in the team site, of course, the activities that I have there I can share through Teams. I can share it through email. If I've chosen Yammer as a part of the offering, that might be a place where we're talking more broadly from a forum perspective, and you would use the Yammer interface to do something that's maybe a larger team where it's more topic driven or regional driven. But they all play together because they're all bound through Office 365 groups, which is really just the entry point that says all of these people are working together. When they have a more real-time persistent chat, they would do that through Teams. When they're managing their content or building a rich business application, they're doing that in SharePoint. Or when they have a big event that's coming up and they want to put it on the shared calendar so everybody knows where it's at, all the information they need to maybe register or log in, they would have that, and it would be shared amongst everybody who's in that team or a list of members. So they're all being built together. They're all meant to be integrated. The different entry points might be, what is it you're doing? What is the task you're trying to accomplish? But it's very connected, and they're very much all built to be a connected experience.
Thanks for that, Mark. And then there was a question, I believe the answer is yes. Don had asked about when this is kind of going back to the OneDrive for Business, where you did mention that there was going to be the sync client was going to incorporate team sites at the end, by the end of the year. And the question was, are you also including support for SharePoint to Mac?
Yes. So the sync client, when we talk about the next-gen sync client, there is a Mac version and there is a PC version, and we don't distinguish. There may be just a delta of weeks or months in terms of functionality, but our intent is that is a single sync client. There happens to be a version you install on Mac, and there is a version for PC, but the functionality is the same, which means, yes, for Mac, we sync OneDrive for Business, OneDrive Consumer, and by end of year, we will sync SharePoint Online team sites. Same sentence, same statement of support is a yes for the sync client for PC as well. So it really is just the sync client we talk about. There is a version for Mac and PC, and they both do X, Y, and by end of year Z, Z being syncing SharePoint Online team site document libraries.
Thanks. And then a little bit on kind of switching to the roadmap question, I suppose. When will modern team sites and publishing sites and the SharePoint app be available for on-premise SharePoint server?
Great question. So already the SharePoint app for iOS supports on-premises, and so it's our first app of the 3 that supports both SharePoint Online, SharePoint on-premises, and specifically that's SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint 2016. So you can do that today. That's available in the store, and if you're across domains in hybrid state or in one or the other, you can leverage that. We will be bringing that same support to the SharePoint app for Android and for Windows 10 mobile, so that you'll be able to use the SharePoint app across all platforms to access on-premises or online with that same value of SharePoint Online, SharePoint 2013, and SharePoint 2016 access. In terms of the team sites, those are first going to be obviously in SharePoint Online, and we haven't committed to a date or any information about when we would bring that experience to SharePoint on premises. But if you look at what we're doing with SharePoint on-prem in the coming feature pack, which we announced, which would come in this month, so November, we're going to be shipping the first feature pack for SharePoint 2016. And some of what's contained in there is an update to the OneDrive for Business user experience. We had already modernized it in the base level of 2016 for the work that we had done in OneDrive for Business in Office 365. And we're bringing the next level of innovation that has shipped to OneDrive for Business in Office 365 and bringing that as an update to SharePoint 2016 Feature Pack 1. The team is pretty committed to bringing more experiences, more of the new modern experiences beyond OneDrive for Business. And I don't have anything I can commit to today because we haven't yet disclosed future feature packs and what will be contained in them, except for that we, of course, are working on them and planning them. But it is highly likely that the new modern experiences for lists, libraries, and home are definitely high on the list of priority and on our want list, and we get the feedback based on that question. We're hearing it again today that would be something that people would definitely want on premises. So there's a lot of other things that will come through on feature packs in terms of you'll see it first in SharePoint Online, and our intent is to get what we can and what makes sense to get on premises. Some of that is just to make it a consistent experience. If you're deployed on SharePoint 2016 in a hybrid state using SharePoint Online, we want those to feel less and less disconnected as we enable you to connect them more and more. Or if you're on path of migration in a phased approach, that your end users, as they go from one environment to the next, aren't going through a huge level of training or switching of context, especially if you're patched and up on the latest feature packs in 2016. The use or the move to SharePoint Online would be relatively seamless.
Very good. And then a question from Jeannie. We're wondering how I guess it's really kind of how like the security trimming works. When you were demoing the sites and it had the suggested sites below, would they be things that you would automatically have rights to already, or could it be that you don't currently have access to it, or maybe you could request access? How does that work?
Yeah, so think of it as it's built on two things. It's built on the search index, and the search index has essentially awareness to all sites and content. But that doesn't mean that all users have the access or the visibility to all sites and content. It'll then ask who is signed in. So in that demo, I was signed in as Adam, and Adam has distinct access to certain sites that have other people working in that site. So the second element that we use to then promote suggested sites is what is relevant to Adam. There are a lot of sites out there in the company, and we want to know who does Adam work with, what sites do they work on, and what content are they working on across those different sites, which will inform the graph to say, let's promote these particular sites to Adam. They're going to be most relevant to him. That'll be a different list than if Mark signs in or Jill signs in. They all three would see a different set of suggested sites because the graph knows enough about them, enough about the content that's available to then promote what's the most relevant to them. The huge caveat, though, and it's really the basis of the question, is I will not see anything that I don't have permissions to access. That's content, that's sites, that's really any type of content in Office 365. If the permissions have been trimmed, especially if you think about the scenario of a private site that got created in this modern way, but it's private where there's only 10 people working on this project, that particular site would not be suggested as somebody outside of the group. But if there's a public site where anybody can join it, and I haven't yet joined it, it may come through as a suggested site because the properties of the people in the site or the content in the site are relevant to me based on what the graph knows about me. But very much the way that the graph works, even if you program your own custom solutions against the graph API, you can't just show everybody everything. It first will ask them, who are they? What set of data is relevant to them? What do they have access to? And then it will show them a list of stuff. That stuff is not anything that will break the boundaries of privacy, and it doesn't break any levels of the permissions model that you've established. If you work in an open way, people will see more. If you work in a more closed or protected way, people will see less, by design.
Excellent. Well, we actually, so many of you have stayed on, so I really appreciate your attention and staying on. Unfortunately, we really need to close the call out, but thank you. And I do have everybody's questions here, and so I will commit to, over the next few days, getting to those questions, and anything I can't answer. Mark, can I just send a couple to you if I have anything that's outstanding that I can't answer?
Yeah, of course. I was just going to suggest, if anybody, you always can reach out through Michael or directly to me. I'm pretty easy to find. On Twitter, I'm